Welcome to the Black Entrepreneur Experience podcast, inside the business, buzz, and brilliance of Black entrepreneurs. Here's your host, Dr. Frances Richards.
What happens in Vegas goes all over the world on Black Entrepreneur Experience, episode number 190.
Thank you for joining us as we elevate the Black Entrepreneur Experience by interviewing CEOs, thought leaders, innovative thinkers, and Black entrepreneurs across the globe. I'm your host, Dr. Frances Richards, CEO and founder of Health Further, founding partner of Jumpstart Health Investors, co-founder and minority owner of Nashville Soccer Club, and also author. Welcome, Marcus Whitney.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Richards. I'm so happy to be here.
You know what? You have an amazing bio. Why don't you share with our audience, fill in the gaps. What would you like our audience to know about you and your business?
When I describe myself and you sort of ran through the litany of things that I'm currently doing, I like to just say I'm a creative entrepreneur. I see opportunities, and if I sort of get hooked on the idea of them coming to life, and I think I have something valuable to contribute to them coming to life, I pretty much jump in with both feet. And so that's what I've done throughout my career. I started my career as a software developer, which is a very creative trade. But it also teaches you a lot about technology and the internet, and the world has moved so much online that that's been a very helpful foundation for me because I don't program technology anymore, but I do a ton of digital marketing. I have a podcast just like you do. I understand how to do digital advertising, email marketing, sort of all these different things. And I also understand how business models work online. And so that's helped me as an investor. Jumpstart Health Investors is a venture firm in the healthcare space, so that, understanding technology has helped me to understand what businesses are likely to do well and where to make our investments. Health Further is a strategic advisory firm that's mostly advising healthcare leaders, healthcare companies on how technology can help their companies as opposed to disrupt their companies. So again, that's where technology sort of fits in. And then a soccer club is sort of a different deal. But even there, I did leverage my skills in technology to grow a very small fledgling nonprofit group up to the professional ranks. And so, yeah, I'm a creative entrepreneur. I think entrepreneurship is one of the most fulfilling things you can be in life because you get to bring things to life and sustain them through making money and profit and paying other people. But it is ultimately a creative activity, and I feel very grateful that I get to do that.
Talk about your podcast.
Yeah, so my podcast is called Marcus Whitney's Audio Universe, and I called it that because I wanted the flexibility to change over time, and I have. I've done different kinds of shows, and even as COVID-19 has sort of struck, I've changed my format once again. At the moment, I do a 30-minute interview with all types of sort of just creative, amazing people. Not all of them are entrepreneurs, but a good number of them are. And it's called Marcus Whitney Live. It's Monday through Friday, 12 o'clock Central. I'm in the Central time zone. And it live streams on like Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, all the different platforms. But then I take the audio version and I put it on my podcast. But I've done all sorts of different interview formats of podcasts. A lot of it is about business, but mostly the thread that connects everything is people who are able to live their passion, able to make their passion into their work, and inspire other people to do the same.
Speaking of COVID-19, talk to our audience. Being a serial entrepreneur, how do you pivot, or how did you adjust, or how are you adjusting during COVID-19?
Yeah, so I do quite a bit of work in the healthcare space, and I had a leg up on COVID-19 and how serious it was going to be. And so when the lockdowns started to happen, I was probably about a week or two ahead of the game. I had already moved everything into my home office, and I pretty aggressively started to build a home studio because I knew that video and audio communication was going to be that much more important the quality of it, the consistency of it, and the ease with which I could do it was going to be that much more important. So I transformed my home office into a home studio. So every day when I come into the office, I've got like lights and a really professional mic and a mixing board and all that kind of stuff. And I just started going through a process of reinvention, honestly. I actually got back into writing some software just because I thought that would be a skill I'd need to wake up and revive. I launched a book during the pandemic, so that was kind of crazy. My book just came out June 30th. And, when you're releasing a book, you pretty much have like a 6-month game plan. And so I had turned the book in February, and then the pandemic really hit in March. And this realization that, wow, I'm not going to be able to go on any book tours. I'm not going to be able to do any speaking gigs, all that stuff. And so I spent a lot of the second quarter reinventing the way that the book launch would work. A lot of it switched into doing what I'm doing with you, just really focusing on being on as many great podcasts as I can, and getting the word out, through that way, because podcast listenership has gone up so much, during COVID-19. So I knew that things like e-commerce and digital content consumption were going to really grow. And I shifted my energy very aggressively to be able to do that, with quality.
Talk about your book. Tell us the name and how can we get it?
Sure. The book is called Create and Orchestrate. You can get it at Amazon, Kindle format, paperback, hardcover. I've also got my own e-commerce store that I set up because I knew people were going to want signed copies, and I can't sell signed copies through Amazon. So you can buy the signed copies or T-shirts through my store, which is creativepower.co. That's creativepower.co. And that's where you can get signed hardcover copies of the book. The book is my journey through entrepreneurship. Dr. Richards, my background is not a traditional business person in that I actually dropped out of college, and I didn't have any traditional business training. So I learned everything through the School of Hard Knocks, and I made a ton of mistakes along that road. And so, but I also learned things in a non-traditional way, and formed my own philosophies, my own frameworks and ways of thinking about business. And so that's a lot of what the book is. It's sort of my journey from being college dropout who was waiting tables to, someone who's now in venture capital and co-owner of a professional soccer team. So everything sort of in between those two things, and a lot of simplified ways to understand the core concepts of business, difficult concepts like leadership, venture capital, all those kinds of things are in the book.
Talk about your greatest discovery in business.
Well, I end the book with a chapter called "The Peak is Not the Peak," and it's actually not about business at all. It's a chapter about my wife and I, and two mountains that we climbed together. And I think the thing that I've learned is this book covers about 20 years of my life. I'm now 44. I've got 2 children. They're 21 and 19. So this book very closely, covers my life as a parent as well, sort of putting these children out into the world. And, it's amazing. I'm 44 and I feel like I've lived a full life, and yet I've got like 2 more of those ahead of me. My dad is 83 and he's alive and kicking. And so it's like, that's another 2 of what I just did. And so I think, when I was younger, I felt like this pressure and this rush, and like time was running out. And if I didn't get something done right away, it would just I would lose all the opportunity. And I think I'm understanding the value of patience, the value of thinking about things from a long-term perspective, just knowing that you have time to do things. Keeping your costs low will allow you more time to do things and to let things sort of develop and mature in a nice way. So I think really understanding the journey aspect of it, the hero's journey, if you will, aspect of being a business person, as opposed to really being in a rush for stuff. That's probably the biggest thing I've learned, because I still feel like I'm figuring stuff out. I know I've got like a noteworthy bio, but from my perspective, I feel like I'm figuring things out. There's so much I'm still learning every day. That makes things fun. And I don't have the next chapter figured out at all of my life or of my business. I really don't.
Talk to a younger Marcus. What would you say?
I wrote this book for the younger Marcus. So, I think what I would say to that person is, Take your time. I wrote a whole chapter about don't believe your own press. That was a big sort of lesson that, a lot of entrepreneurs get caught up in being the top 40 of this or the top 100 of that or best in class of this, all these things that really don't matter, quite frankly. Watch your money. That's what matters, right? Understand finance, learn finance, understand balance sheets, understand a P&L, statement, understand cash flow, understand how to manage cash flow. Those sort of key things really, really were big. Another thing would probably be honest with yourself about what you like to do and what you're good at. I think when I was first doing business, there was this sense that I had to do all of these different aspects of business. Like I had to be the person managing a bunch of people, and I've now learned I don't have to. That's not a must do. There are people out there who love the aspect of business of managing people. I can do it. It's just not my favorite thing to do. I like to create things, and they're two different types of activities. So, I think there would have been a lot of talking to him and just telling him to step back, think for himself, and not feel so much pressure to live up to some idea or ideal of what being a successful business person is.
Speaking of success, how does Marcus define success? What does that look like for you?
So at this point, I really care about my well-being, and I care about the flexibility of my time. That's what I care about. I've been able to check some of the boxes that I think some people say, man, if I could just do this, if I could just do that. And I've done some of those things to realize, like, the next day you're still there, you're still you, and that thing didn't really change you. So, just kind of going back to this idea of really focusing on the journey, the quality of your journey, and feeling fulfilled along your journey. Control of my time, as long as I get to continue to control my time, that is at the top of my list. Nothing matters more than that. Because, I want to be able to work out. I want to be able to meditate. I want to be able to spend time with my family. I want to be able to be there for my family when important things come up and I'm the person that they need to show up for those important things. I want to have time to think about things and not be so rushed that I can't process some complicated ideas, or situations. So control of my time is number one. And then, number two is being able to take care of the basic things. And I think, this COVID-19 moment in time is helping us to sort of pare down what is actually important. There's a lot of things we thought before this that were important that are not that important. There's a lot of things before this that we thought we needed, and we're realizing we really didn't need them, and I'm happy for that. That lesson is a good lesson. I'm happy to kind of get back down to basics. What do we really need as opposed to all these things we think we want? So yeah, controlling my time and being able to provide for the things that we truly need as a family. That's it. Outside of that, it's, everything else is a goal, something that I'm working towards, but it's not like that, ever present sense of success that's always there every single day. They're more like milestones.
Marcus, talk about self-care. What does self-care look like to Marcus?
When I was younger, I had no idea that self-care was even important. I was just running. And, again, I think I was also very impressionable and living up to things that other people modeled as, what you needed to do. I'll give you an example. I was in a technology company and I had a business development role, and we had offices in Boston and small office in New York and an office in San Francisco. And, this was a hard charging business full of, quite frankly, young, well-to-do people. And a lot of what looked like being successful and making progress was hanging out at parties and drinking. And that was sort of like the business development thing, there was a really big culture around that. I mean, at the moment, there's not because all the bars are closed, right? But, you do that for 2, 3, 4 years and look, you're going to pay for it. There's a reason why you see so many traveling salespeople who are not very happy, not in great shape, those kinds of things because, living in an airport is no kind of life. So for me, self-care is one of the big reasons why I want to control my time, and I've developed a set of practices, or things that I absolutely don't do that are core to my self-care practice. It's interesting. I'm in the middle of this book launch right now, and it's actually pretty challenged. My self-care life is pretty challenged, but I wrote about in the book that there's seasonality. There's storms and then there's times to settle. And it's like, it's sort of impossible to avoid the storms if you're out there trying to do stuff. You just have to keep your eyes on the fact that won't last forever. You'll be able to get back to a window of settle time. And, I've had that cycle enough times that I know it's coming. But for me, sobriety, I eat plant-based, I meditate, I like to work out, walk, run, lift weights, stretch. I used to do martial arts before COVID-19. Now I've had to take a break just because, you're in such close proximity when you're doing martial arts, unfortunately. But, drinking a lot of water, getting good sunlight, good conversations with friends. These are all things that are part of this. The big one, sleep, getting enough sleep, probably top of the list of all the things I just talked about. But yeah, all of those things are part of my self-care protocol. And, I've probably been doing that combination of things for pretty religiously for the last year and a half. And the difference in the quality of my work, the throughput, the steadiness of sort of my emotional state, is unbelievable. So, I'm addicted to that now. I'm very addicted to, just having this very steady, stream of good energy, high performance, no sort of, ups and downs and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, self-care is a big deal for me. I think entrepreneurs basically have to look at what they do. If you're a really high functioning entrepreneur, it's not that different than a professional athlete. Really, you have to, even right now, it's 8 a.m. Central Time and I got to perform, I got to be able to deliver, and I might have something that's going on 10 o'clock at night tonight and I got to deliver. So, sometimes entrepreneurship has long days and you can't be like, oh, I've had a long day, I can't perform. You got to be able to perform. So professional athletes treat their bodies like an asset, they invest in them, they eat well, they sleep well, they have, massage therapy and all this other kind of stuff, right? I think entrepreneurs need to do the same. You're not getting paid for your body, but your body is a big part of everything you do. Your brain, is a big part of everything you do. So you got to take care of yourself.
I agree. And one of my little sayings is your health is your wealth.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. And I think that's why controlling your time is such a big part of that, right? Because when you start to lose control of your time, it's harder to prioritize your health, because you're just sort of running, ripping. And then when you do get some time back, you're like any kind of comfort. What can I do for comfort? When you have control of your time, you get to sort of give yourself the time to take that walk, sit down on the cushion and do that meditation, do that prayer, whatever that is for you, right? Whatever that thing is for you that rejuvenates you and centers you and grounds you and prepares you for all the work you're going to do out there in the world.
Marcus, I like that controlling your time. Talk to someone in our audience right now with COVID-19 and you hear a lot about hustling and grinding and as an entrepreneur and side hustle and all of that. And the entrepreneur and they're trying to get their business or they're in their business and it's, and they are having to work a full-time job. You're not controlling your time. Talk to them. What advice would you give them?
I would say that freedom is not free. And so, I was there. I was waiting tables 6.5 days a week And then when I wasn't doing that, I was reading computer books and training to write code so I could get out of waiting tables 6.5 days a week. It's been a journey for me to get here to where I'm 44 and I do have ultimate control of my time at this point, right? I'm not on anyone else's payroll. Everything I do is a partnership transaction, but that took a long time. So, you have to have patience and you have to know that if you want to get to that control of your time, that is a project. And that project is going to be a season of your life where you're going to probably work a little bit extra. And that's okay. Most of us who have achieved this have gone through that, so I think that would be the thing I would say is you're not alone. Just know that is part of the process. I'm very much for side hustles because, I think most people don't have a rock solid A+ guaranteed, business hit right out of the gate. And is a lot of risk in quitting your job. So I think side hustle is a really good way to learn the basics of how a business operates, and not risk, being able to pay your bills on a week to week basis. I think, people need to manage their risk as they start to look into entrepreneurship. I'm never for people like just jumping out of the gate and being crazy, but having a side hustle is a different kind of risk, right? It's a risk of your time. You're giving up more time. You really got to be diligent about, basically, if you're going to do a side hustle, what that means is your hanging out time is gone. Okay. You have your main job, then you have your side hustle, and any other time you have is sleep, family, and whatever health thing you can fit in. That's it. Like your hanging out time is out the window because it's just not enough hours in the day. There's just not. But that's okay. You're not going to do that forever, right? You will either at some point realize this side hustle didn't work and you'll kill it and maybe take a little rest, or the side hustle does well enough that you can say, wow, I can't do the full-time job. The side hustle becomes the full-time job, but at least you built a nice bridge between the two, right? So that should always be a transitional thing. That should never be a full-time thing, a side hustle.
You talked about risk. Share the story about your worst moment in business and what was your takeaway?
It is hard to come up with the worst moment in business, but I do have one that stands out. It was a sneaky moment of risk because I was making a lot of money. So I had a software development company and we worked on projects with different clients. And I had very quickly grown the company to about 10 people, and we were making, over $1 million a year. And what I did not understand was that we had client concentration risk. We had one client who represented 70% of our revenue. And that meant that they had a ton of control over us. And ultimately I had to fold the company because they made a demand I basically could not comply with, or I should say I couldn't resist. And so I ended up folding the company and becoming a department inside of their company. So that was the hard lesson of, it's not all about your top line revenue. You have to have diversity of revenue. That's a really big lesson that if someone doesn't tell you, it's not the most intuitive thing in the world, because when you're making money and you're paying people, that feels good, and it feels good to be able to say, I just made $1 million in my first year of business. That feels really good. But if you've got one client that's representing 600,000 of that, that's not good. So that was one of those things where it was a risk, but it was a counterintuitive risk because I wasn't looking at the lack of diversity in the revenue. I was just looking at the revenue and how big it looked and how great that felt. So that's one example of risk. Risk is a very, very sneaky thing. And I think over time with experience, you start to realize, with every offensive move you seek to make, you have to think about what vulnerabilities you are leaving yourself open to. When I typically think about risk today, especially when it comes to starting up a venture, the first thing I go to is insurance. Do I have the adequate insurance to handle the litigious nature of America. Quite frankly, it's like, people in America sue people, companies sue people. So am I protected in terms of my intellectual property? Am I protected in terms of professional liability? Am I protected in terms of errors and omissions? So that's one big area that most, first time and aspiring entrepreneurs miss, because they've never been part of a lawsuit, So risk is a big thing. A lot of people talk about entrepreneurship as if it's a very sort of risky thing, but successful entrepreneurs are very, very keen to risk, and they have to do an exceptional job of managing it, because you can't keep your money if you're just sort of being flippant about risk.
Speaking of money, talk about capital. How did you raise capital to start your first business?
So my first business was bootstrapped. I went out there and I sold a service and I delivered the service. And I am a big believer that that's the primary way that most people should start a business. Either save your own money to invest in things, maybe get a small credit card, but that's a dangerous thing. So be careful about that. But raising capital is a very complicated deal that most people don't fully understand. It greatly complicates the business, because it brings other people into positions of control. It changes the flow of money as it comes into the company. And it's just usually very, very complicated. It's something most people don't understand. So I would say, why do you need the capital? If you need the capital because you're being impatient and you want to accelerate growth in front of demand, you don't need to raise capital. You need to just be patient, and you need to keep plugging away, and you need to sell. There are those businesses out there, mostly technology or drug discovery businesses, or like real estate businesses or things like that, where it's impossible. You can't, the way that the business operates, it has to be financed before the revenue can be generated. And in those cases, you just have to get really good at understanding how to raise capital. In real estate, it's about having a great banking partner. In technology, it's about venture capital. In drug discovery, it's usually private equity, because the amount of, money you need to raise, it's sort of specialized. You're spending millions of dollars in research and development before you ever can get the product to market. It's just sort of the nature of the business. Most people aren't doing those kinds of businesses. Most people are trying to, sell some product that they've come up with. And I think, the only time you want to raise capital, and usually you want to go with a debt model as opposed to an equity model where you're selling percentages of your company for it, is when the demand outstrips your ability to deliver and you need some financing to help you to meet the demand. That's a much safer mode of raising capital, as opposed to raising capital in front of the market demand. Now I'm in venture capital. I invest in businesses that need capital. So I'm not against it, but I am against it for most businesses. I'm against it for most entrepreneurs.
What should we know that we don't know about venture capitalists?
The most important thing is that venture capital professionals are performing a job. They're not like Mr. Moneybags, where they themselves are super rich and they're almost certainly not investing their own money. They are a form of a banker. They have access to capital that they have been entrusted with for the purpose of investing in companies, and they've come to an agreement with the people who have entrusted them with that money about what kinds of companies they're going to invest in. And so when you go to a venture capitalist and you pitch your business for funding, if your business doesn't match their investment thesis, they're not going to invest in you, and it has nothing to do with you. It's nothing personal. So, it is just very, very important that you look at the venture capital space and you have a keen understanding of, does your business line up with their investment thesis? And understand this person's job is to generate a return on that capital. They are working for somebody. It's not their money. I think just those two things really help to improve the dynamic of the entrepreneur who's going to pitch for venture capital. then after that, you need to understand how these deals work. You need to understand liquidation preferences, which is a whole thing covered in my book. It would be too much for us to cover on this podcast, but I would say get my book. I've got a chapter on it. Liquidation preferences is an important thing. And then valuation. Those are the two big things you need to understand to be able to structure the right kind of deal with a venture capitalist.
There's not a lot of representation of African Americans or individuals from the Black diasporas on both sides, receiving the VC money or in the VC space. Talk about that.
Yeah, it is part of the, it's part of the implications of systemic racism in the American economy. It's part of it. Venture capital is a very unregulated capital market. From the SEC's perspective, they basically say, look, you have to be an accredited investor, but beyond that, these equities are not things we're going to take a lot of time and energy to regulate. It's not like the public markets where you're buying stocks and everything is very, very regulated because they're trying to protect the public. These are private investments. And so the first thing is, in order to invest in these things, you have to be an accredited investor by SEC terms, which means you need to make $250,000 a year, or you need to have a net worth of over $1 million. Well, if we know anything about the Black, economy in America, that's a very small percentage of us. So that right away, just the nature of being an accredited investor locks out, I'm talking about 95% of Black America from even being able to participate. So when you have that, then you have a lack of diversity in terms of who's writing the checks. And then you get all the implicit bias and the pattern matching in terms of who gets the checks. So, it's just a really nasty system, unfortunately. And we're starting to put some sunshine on it now. And it's starting to change now. That change is accelerated a little bit because of everything that's happened in the wake of the murder of George Floyd. But yeah, it's terrible. The percentage of capital that goes to Black entrepreneurs, especially Black women entrepreneurs, is, so I think for Black women entrepreneurs is sub 1%. But at the same time, the number of Black professionals in venture capital is completely inadequate. So like you said, we've got the problem on both sides of the tables, and it's a very difficult challenge,
Marcus, how did you get into venture capitalists?
So I snuck in the back door. My partner is a white male, sort of the typical model for what a venture capitalist looks like. Graduated from a graduate business school, Vanderbilt Owen School of Management. He was an innovator, and he was looking at how technology and entrepreneurship could innovate in venture capital. And so he sort of put that call out pretty broadly, and I answered that call, and I just worked really hard to earn his trust, and he made me a partner in the firm. So I came in through the back door. I didn't go in through traditional methods. Typically you'd need to have an MBA to be a venture capitalist. That's kind of one of the credentials that they use to keep a lot of people out. So obviously, being someone who doesn't have a college degree, I obviously bypassed that one. And then I'm Black. That's another big, thing that I bypassed. So yeah, it really was just going in through the back door. And I've done that a lot. I've sort of used, again, the skills around technology and entrepreneurship. I've used those to get into rooms and to situations where I normally wouldn't be able to get into. Those are really big equalizers if you can also, do a good job with communication, right? And you can learn quickly on the fly. Technology and entrepreneurship are really, really great skills to be able to get access into areas where otherwise you wouldn't be able to get access.
Marcus, what problem exists in the world today that you'd like to solve?
Well, the problem I'm focused on right now is one we just talked about, which is Black people participating in venture capital. I'm particularly focused on healthcare at the moment, healthcare venture capital, because healthcare is the largest economic sector of the U.S. economy. It is, depending on how you slice it, 18 to 19% of GDP. So huge amount of spending going on in healthcare across America. And we are really disproportionately not represented among leadership in venture capital and entrepreneurship. And so that's an area that I'm really focused on. And my focus is on the venture side, trying to grow Black healthcare venture professionals, as well as get more investments going into Black healthcare companies. So that's the current focus that I've got. And I hope I can make a dent in that over the next 5 years.
What are you most grateful for in your life?
Wow, that's a hard one. I think the easiest way to bucket that would be family. I've had the best parents. They've been amazing and they're still here. So that's just, incredible that they have been able to see their grandchildren grow up. And, I'm very grateful for that. And that they've been able to see some of the things that I've been able to accomplish and to sort of know that I'm okay. I've done okay. So, that my kids are fantastic. Very, very fortunate to have a, very loving wife. So, I would say family, it's got to be what I'm most grateful for. And then if I could just put something right next to that or maybe right below it, I would say my health, I just have such an appreciation for my health, the fact that I'm able to do the things I'm able to do. And, like you said, health is wealth, right? So that's kind of, that's probably, 1A and 1B for me.
Talk about legacy. Marcus, when it's all said and done, how do you want to be remembered?
That's an interesting one. And I don't think I'm there yet. I talked about like that. I still think I'm figuring everything out. Like I've written this book and it just feels like the first chapter. So I feel like I don't yet know. I feel like I'm a work in progress. And in terms of what my legacy will ultimately be, I think I'm still figuring that out. But I hope the thing that people will be able to say is that, just basic stuff like that I was a good person, that's probably the thing that as the days go by that I seem to care more about, are people going to feel like I treated them well, and I was a good person. And, I don't think any of us can say we did that 100% perfectly throughout our lives. And so, I'm trying more and more as life goes on to tip the scales in that direction, just the individual people that I interact with.
Marcus, what can we do right now to support your business?
Look, buy this book. It's interesting. It's like when you write a book, people will tell you you don't make a lot of money writing a book. And it's like so true because, I spent 5 years writing this book and, the book is, people are telling me the book is really good, really useful, really valuable. And it's so inexpensive. It's like, now that I'm on the side of being a published author, it's like, wow, you can spend all this time, really, you pour your heart and your soul, and your brain into making a book, and someone can get all of that, for $7 on Kindle or, $15 paperback or, $20 something hardcover. I mean, it's just like the most incredible deal. So it's not about the money. It's about me being able to get the ideas and get people to learn about my perspectives. That's becoming more valuable than I thought it was going to be. Getting text messages from people I know who are like, hey, I just want to thank you. I read this chapter and it helped me today. I had this situation with my boss and I read this chapter and I went and had this conversation and it worked out incredibly well. So I would say buy the book, Create and Orchestrate. That's what I'm out here to do right now is get this book out there and buy it. If you like it, get it for somebody else. I'm just trying to, I'm trying to get the word out about the book. That's the thing today.
Marcus, talk about your why. Why did you write that book?
I believe that we all have this thing that I sort of term creative power that I think is like, it's a divine gift that humans have. It's like if you look around, every single thing that we see that was not created by nature, humans created, right? That's creative power. Everything we use, I'm sitting in a chair, humans made that work. I'm talking on a mic, a human made it. I have headphones to hear you, humans made that, right? So we have this creative power, and we sort of get to this weird place where we take it for granted and we just think all these things have just appeared and always been here. And it's like, no, humans made all this stuff. You know what I mean? Everything in this world that we sort of use and we interact with, humans make. And so bringing that back to people's consciousness is ultimately what I'm trying to do, and get them to sort of fire up their creative power and not just be consumers of things, but create, make something, create some value in the world, try to find where your passions align with creative energy and what the world needs, and live there. And so everything I'm trying to do in terms of the people I'm interviewing on my podcast, or telling my own story, or all of this stuff, investing in entrepreneurs, this is all around trying to support people in accessing and leveraging their creative power.
What is something you dream about often that you have not done?
Oh, that's a good question. What do I dream about often that I haven't done? I haven't bought a really nice car. I don't think I dream about it often, but I think about it occasionally. I've never bought a really nice car. I've just always prioritized other things, and it's still probably not going to happen anytime soon because I'm not doing nearly as much driving right now as I was before COVID-19. But that's probably on the list. Before I turn 50, I'll want to just to burn that experience out.
Talk about business opportunities in COVID-19.
Oh, they're everywhere. Ray Dalio, who is a very, very big name in the world of hedge funds. He's the chief investment officer for Bridgewater. He's also a best-selling author. He wrote a book called Principles. He's been writing these incredible posts all year talking about the New World Order, specifically around what's happening with COVID-19. And he did an interview with Chris Anderson, who's the founder of TED, the TED Talk series, where they were asking Ray about, are we in a depression? And Ray said, yes, that's what we're in, but, not to think about it from the emotional perspective, but more about what does it mean to be in a depression? And it really means that we're rewriting the economy. And that means that so Chris then went on to ask him, hey, what kind of companies are going to make it in this era? He said, that's the beauty of it. There are two kinds of companies that are going to make it. One kind are the, meat and potato companies. These are the companies we always will need. And we can kind of see what those companies are, trucking, grocery stores, right? Those things are always going to kind of be there. They're just part of what we need to survive. We need them. They'll always be here. Plumbers, or, COVID-19 is not going to stop the plumbing industry. We need our toilets to work, right? So there's those basic businesses that are going to continue to operate. And then there's going to be the innovators. And those are going to be the businesses that look at this moment and see all the change that's coming as a result of it, and aggressively seek to build the new normal. And those businesses will win. And so, I'm definitely on the side of the innovator. That's sort of where I live. I'm not a meat and potatoes kind of business person. And I think you're already seeing it. I think you're already seeing the Zooms of the world and the Shopifys of the world that are growing leaps and bounds. Their numbers are going through the roof, because they're taking the place of things that we used to do in person. And I think to a degree, certainly when we're able to go back out and do things in person, that'll change. But, I think to a degree, this is what these are new practices that we're always going to kind of do to some degree going forward. So innovation is the way through.
Talk about a brand or a business that's dominating, you admire, and why.
I am, when you talk about admire, that's a tough one. I think I can say Shopify. So Shopify is an e-commerce platform that really empowers entrepreneurs to quickly, build an online presence for retail. And I think they've just done an incredible job of taking something that many software companies had already done, which is building e-stores. These are not new things, but really making it incredibly simple and easy to use. And I just think they have taken so much market share, and they've sort of become the de facto in the space. And the way that they took something that was already kind of in place, but really worked on the aspects of usability and customer support that were always sort of issues, and just really leaned in to improve those areas. It just shows that, just because something is already being done doesn't mean it's being done well enough, and there are opportunities to go out there and take something that people are already doing, but just really take it to the next level. And, I admire that about Shopify. I think a lot of people thought that the e-commerce software space was pretty much a commodity, and they proved that you could make it into, something really, really valuable.
Marcus, if you conducted this interview, what is the one question you would have asked? I would like you to ask the question and answer it.
Yeah, so I probably would have asked, that's a really good question. I probably would have asked, what do you do on a daily basis right now? Because I think that's really interesting. In this moment, how have people adopted and adapted, on a daily basis in this time of COVID-19? And what I am doing every single day is an incredible amount of this, talking to people through a screen. But I'm also doing a ton of learning. I am just, again, I'm very technology native at this point in my career, but I am doing a tremendous amount of learning. And I think this is a time, if you can afford to spend some time doing it, really learn. There's so much fear-based news out there, and there's so much sensational stuff, and there's so much just nonsense. Like, put that stuff to the side and learn something new. Get your brain into a beginner's mind space and learn something new, because that's the thing right now. That's the opportunity that we have right now is to learn and rethink and reapproach how we do everything.
Marcus, we've come to the part of our interview. It's called the Fun Facts Lightning Round. I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I'd like you to give me very quick answers. Are you ready for the Fun Facts Lightning Round?
I'm ready.
Your first job?
My first job was working for my mom in medical billing.
The last movie you saw?
The Open Guard.
You relax doing what?
Meditating.
Your favorite singer or rapper?
Oh boy. Run the Jewels.
Your favorite dance song?
James Brown, I Feel Good.
What food you eat every week, no matter what?
Avocados.
Your favorite month?
December.
Hit the couch or hit the treadmill?
Hit the treadmill.
Thank you so much for joining us, Marcus, on Black Entrepreneur Experience Podcast. Before we let you go, why don't you share with our audience the best way for them to connect with you and give them all of your social media handles?
Yes, I've tried to make this very simple. So the easiest way to reach me is marcuswhitney.com. At that website, you'll find out everything about me, about the book. I've got a newsletter you can subscribe to, and also Marcus Whitney everywhere on social. So, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, you just search for my name. I will come up. Promise. Marcus Whitney.
Thank you, Marcus. That's a wrap.
Thank you so much, Dr. Richards.
Thank you for listening and subscribing to Black Entrepreneur Experience. We would love for you to leave a review and rating on iTunes and share with your friends. For show notes and more episodes, go to www.beepodcast.com. Join us next Wednesday, and remember, green is the new black. So keep your bank accounts and your business in the black.